It's like red pill, blue pill. You could fucking, right, as far as the indoctrination of science, reductionist materialistic science, right? You could say that space is dead, right? That there's nothing in space, right? That there's only life in complex cellular structure, right? And so what I'm saying in those pages is that the actual genesis, right, of complex cellular life, right, is an abstract intellectual principle, often referred to as God, which exists unilaterally in a perpetual condition of rest, every cubic centimeter of all space, forever, constantly. Right? This is my worldview. Right? Inevitably, you always end up at the chicken or the egg, right? And it's mentioned in those first few pages. Thought or emotion, right? Right? But I am under the understanding, right, that mind permeates all of space, that all of creation is a conscious field, right? And so instances of magic, right, what was referred to as magic and sorcery, that's now referred to as telekinesis, remote viewing, psychokinesis, right? Remote viewing, right? That they're all the same thing, right? That it's tapping into the understanding, right? That space is permeated, right, with a perfectly nested, abstract, geometrical hologram, right? And within that singular hologram, right, is, well, here's two examples, right? So this is a circle subdivided into 18, right? Where every relationship, right, is connected, right? So there's like 4 dimensions within this, right? Where it just keeps collapsing closer and closer, right? By skipping lines, right? You understand? Okay. The second one is this, right? This is the dodecahedron inside of the icosahedron, right? And it is also a compound of 5 cubes. Each of the edges of the pentagrams, the 12 pentagrams, pentagrams that occupy the inside of each of the pentagonal faces are also sides of a square, right? It's a compound of 5 cubes, right? And so there's one square that you can't see. It's kind of hard for me to point it out here. But it's, let's see, yeah, there it is. One, and you probably can't see this at all. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? But anyway, right? All these things, and these are 2 examples of a seemingly infinite variety, right? But they're all nested perfectly together, right? So sublime in their connection, right, that they dissolve into seeming non-existence, right? And they exist in a perpetual state of rest. However, consciousness, right, the expression of that knowing is consciousness, right, is the divine mind of deity, right? And so deity exists at rest always, forever as well, but eventually seeks to express its knowing and see its perpetual wisdom manifested, right? That life is a material simulation of a nobler spiritual truth, right? That things come into the world from out of their divine abstract origin, right? To grow for a time and then record the knowing of their experience back into the divine mind of God. Walter Russell teaches us that the noble gases are in fact the akashic substance, that they are not matter, that through the mutating pressure fields of conscious pressure upon the hologram, right, which is consciousness, which is God, right, through God's thinking, right, it puts pressure upon the hologram, right, which contracts, it collapses, the vector equilibrium, right, it collapses towards singularity, right. And as it's collapsing from the outside in, right? By the conscious pressure of God the Father, God Almighty, of that divine conscious origin to life, right? It engenders electric resistance, right, to the noble gases, right? And so as it continues to collapse, it becomes too dense, right? And it sprays out as an octave of chemical elements, right? And so there's however many of the noble gases, right? And they offer you each 7 or 9 chemical. I think it's 9. 4 on each side, and it's its own wave. It's a long wave, right? Which gives you a different periodic table from the Mendeleev periodic table, right? And so, right, that's how matter first comes into existence through mind, right? And then further consideration mutates it and manipulates it into complex cellular structure, right? Into the mind of man, right? Which again is the end of evolution, because it's the only creature, right, that can offer a reflection of God's knowing back upon it, right? Back upon him, back upon her, right? That he brings man into the world that he might acknowledge how he arrived and, right, offer up a moment of appreciation, right? So it's a mirror, it's reflecting. Everything else before man is enslaved to their baser nature. They don't have the luxury of complex thought, though of course domesticated animals make a strong case, on some level, certainly. I have a bunch of animals, right? And so in the spirit of reincarnation, perhaps they come as people, because during our spoiling them, they're imbued with a sense of ego, and that compels them, more of a conscious identity, right? But man's capacity for rationale, for reasoning, right, gives you the potential to soar with the angels as far as wisdom, right, knowledge, right, and bring you closer to God than anything else.